Thanks for joining us online. I'm Jonah Vic of Channel 2 Sports alongside Vic Carucci of the Buffalo News here for our weekly Bills breakdown. And boy, it's a good time to be a Bills fan these days.
It really is.
3-1 through 4 weeks of the season, and they've got the 1-3 Cincinnati Bengals on the road this upcoming week. But we got to go back to the win in Atlanta, a 23-17 victory for the Bills. Probably the best regular season win for this team in years.
Quite a long time. I think saying it was the best road win since the Super Bowl era would not be an overstatement. I know they've had an occasional road win here and there along the way through the 17-year drought. Certainly nothing that we can really talk about. But, yeah, this was the classic statement victory. And
it's on top of a win over the Broncos, and I think it's that compound effect.
That's the statement.
Right. The
beating two legit teams back to back,
right,
and one on the road.
You beat the Broncos, and you think, okay, are the Bills for real? And then they go into Atlanta, a place where the Falcons had not scored fewer than 24 points in a game dating back to 2015. The Bills hold them to 17. Granted, Julio Jones got hurt in the first half. He's a Hall of Fame caliber receiver.
Yes.
But that aside, how impressive was this Bills victory, and what stood out to you the most? Obviously, the defense played well, but all-encompassing.
What stood out to me the most was a defense that had been playing well through the first 3 games of the season. Even the loss, of course, in Carolina was a great defensive effort, was making plays on defense, difference-making, game-changing plays. That's really the essence of what this win was all about, and including a touchdown, the 52-yard score by Tre'Davious White. They have to do that. Even when you factor in an offense that doesn't have a great deal of explosiveness, that is primarily rooted in the running game, when that's going well, you still need a difference-making defense to give you the chance to be over the top and compete with those elite teams. It doesn't just happen, I think, because you can throw the ball well and you have a great quarterback. Sure, for some teams it does happen that way, but just a handful that have quarterbacks like that. The majority of the league needs something else. The Bills are part of that majority that needs something else, and that's the defense.
4 weeks into the season, LaShawn McCoy doesn't have a touchdown, and the Bills are 3-1. I mean, you think preseason, they trade Sammy Watkins. This is maybe a team that goes 7-9, 6-10, 8-8, something like that. But all of a sudden, they're 3-1, and they've got an easier schedule from here on out. Colts, Chargers, Dolphins. I mean, what would be realistic expectations now for this team moving forward?
Well, I've changed my expectations. I've gone from a team that was strictly looking at the future and not so much about the present to a team that can contend. That defense is the reason I have that confidence. And my expectation, I made the pick in the Buffalo News of a 6-10 finish. I'm revising that. I do think that this is a team on course for something in the neighborhood of about 10 wins, maybe 9 or 10, but 10 could get you in the playoffs, I think, for sure. 9 could be a push. But when you look at this division, and right now they sit alone in first place, look at the vulnerability of the Patriots, look at the transition of the entire league. You see teams that have issues, even the so-called top contending teams, whatever that is. Atlanta, classic example with Julio Jones hurt, and they also lost Mohamed Sanu. So you've got injuries. The Patriots suffered their big one with the loss of Julian Edelman and others that they've dealt with. So I think when you really break it down, there are more teams that have vulnerabilities, even at the top end and certainly throughout the league, than not. That gives the Bills a chance with a schedule that looks pretty favorable to take care of business. The key, though, is to take care of business, not to go into any of these games assuming, you know what, we beat the Broncos, we beat the Falcons, we're really good. That is something they have to guard against.
And that's a huge topic of conversation this week, because now the Bills roll into Cincinnati to play a Bengals team that was 0-3, got their first win because they beat the Browns. I mean, it's the Browns. So, I mean, I'm not putting a lot of stake into this Bengals team. I've watched them play the first few weeks of the season. They're not very good, and they're very susceptible to losing by a large number of points when they play a good defense, which is why this week is so important for the Bills. Now, you brought up the point of you have a regress game, and you go beat the Broncos, you beat the Falcons. Those are 2 huge wins. How do the Bills stay focused and stay on course to beat a team that, frankly, they are better than this week?
Yeah, well, it starts with the coach. And Sean McDermott so far has done a lot more right than wrong in the moves he's made, not just in assembling this team, but I think just in terms of keeping its focus. And he preaches to the media about process. He uses that word constantly, of course, in press conferences. We're all tired of hearing it, and he's so boring in those conferences. But what I think he's doing is getting across to his players. The most important message he has to deliver is not to us in the media, it's to those players in the meeting room, in the locker room. And I think he is making headway. I think he does have players understanding what it means to be good and how to how to sustainably succeed. And that's where this message for this week, you can't have a backslide here. You can't go into Cincinnati and look at their team and assume just because they've lost more games than they've won that that's an easy team for the Bills to play. No team should really be considered easy for the Bills. They have their problems, and most of them exist within their passing game, as we know. But if they are listening to what the head coach has been preaching right along, and I believe it's a message that he delivers pretty well and seriously, and players understand that if you don't take him at his word on stuff like this, you're not going to be around here very long. So I think that's the power, the hammer, so to speak, that he carries.
They set that tone earlier in the offseason. I mean, that this is McDermott's team. They're going to do things his way, and if you buy in, you're gone. And frankly, it's translated onto the field. You're seeing a team through 4 weeks has only turned the ball over once. That's how you win games, because they've taken the ball away 7 times.
Right.
So it's not even just the defense, it's the offense not shooting itself in the foot. And that had been a problem for the Bills in years past, as we know, losing games late, kind of throwing them away. But turning our attention to not only the Bengals game this week, but down the road, there's still room for improvement. Buffalo gave up, nearly 400 yards of offense to the Falcons. Yeah, they got the win, but it wasn't perfect. Where do you see, what are the weaknesses, and how can the Bills address them, not only this week in Cincinnati, but down the road?
Well, you've got to shut the door completely against the run. They entered that Falcons game ranked 7th in the league against the run. And then Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman show up, 2 of the best running backs, the best running back combo, arguably, or one of it in the league. And they get trampled. I mean, those guys had their success, and the Falcons as a whole ran the ball effectively, especially Freeman. So that is an area that the Bills must keep in check. And I think what was helpful to them was that Atlanta tried to beat them first through the air and set up the run that way. Denver tried to do the same thing. There might be a team that figures out, let's just run right at them from the beginning and take the tempo and everything to them that way, play a clock control power game, and you might be able to win against the Bills. So I think, or certainly have success against that defense. I think that Buffalo needs to make some improvements there. I also think offensively, you need to see more progress from the running game. I love the persistence against the Falcons. That was important. And I think even though they didn't have great success, averaging only a few yards per carry, they at least tried to run and kept control of the clock and took the track meet away from the Falcons. They're going to need to do that against teams that will throw the ball, and that is Andy Dalton, A.J. Green, this Bengals team. They'll try to do the same thing.
I totally agree. I think the run defense right now is the Achilles heel for the Bills. I mean, we can talk about the passing offense, until we're blue in the face, but what the Broncos did early in the game in week 3, and the Falcons actually did establish the run early on with Freeman. They just got away from it and started
quickly.
Yeah, they did. And I don't know why both teams, the Broncos and the Falcons, got away from it early, but you're onto something here. I mean, if a team can establish the run early in a game, and maybe it's the fact that the Bills haven't fallen behind early in games. That's been critical for them. They don't have to, they're not a team that can play catch up through the air. So
you wouldn't think so. No.
Right.
I think when they make their big plays in the passing game, those are smart design rollouts and movements by Tyrod Taylor, and then having Charles Clay do his thing downfield, where he ran a corner route on one play, that 34-yarder, the 44-yarder, which came with the intention, again, of a boot play beforehand, and then the protection broke down, and Taylor finds him down the sideline where the DB maybe went to sleep a little bit on him. But they'll hit a couple of those big plays, but you're right. If they get in a hole, you don't want to be in a situation where they've got to throw their way out of that hole, because I think they could be in big trouble.
All right, and so we turn our attention to week 5 now, the Bengals in Cincinnati. As I mentioned earlier, the Bengals' offensive line is a mess. And with a new offensive coordinator now in Cincinnati, they've been doing a lot more short passes, quicker throws for Andy Dalton, get the ball out of his hands so he can't get hit. This is playing into where the Bills have success because not only do they have good coverage guys in Trey White and E.J. Gaines, they can get to the quarterback quickly. So in theory, this should be another good game for the Bills. How can they seal it with a W? Because the last thing the Bills want is to go into a bye losing to a 1-3 Bengals team.
No, going into a bye at 4-1 and savoring that is a whole different world and something that sets them up, I think, very nicely post-bye. But to the point of how to handle this quick passing Bengal team, I love the way they have reconfigured this front. And you've got Eddie Yarborough getting a lot of meaningful snaps. You've got Cedric Thornton getting a lot of meaningful snaps. These are really good athletes. These are quick players. They are lateral pursuit guys. They can drop. They can do pretty much anything you need them to do athletically and complement the starters who are in there, of course. And, of course, Shaq Lawson being hurt is a disadvantage. I don't know how quickly he comes back from that groin injury. That could linger. But they do have depth. And the reduction of snaps for Marcel Darius is actually a plus here, only in the sense, he's getting paid an astronomical amount of money. And so someone might say, what's the plus? The plus is that you're getting more reps for Ryan Davis, for Yarborough, again, for Thornton. These are athletes who play better, I think, in the attacking of short passing game, getting upfield pressure, chasing down those intermediate throws, shorter throws. So you really need to have those kinds of athletes, I think, available to you rather than a big space eater.
Well, it's good to have depth because there are different situations, as we know in the NFL, down to down. You need different guys for different situations.
Right.
And having Marcel sit here and there is not a bad thing considering his injury history as well. So the Bills, 3-1, taking on the 1-3 Bengals this week. It has all the makings of a trap game for Buffalo, but once again, the Bills are underdogs heading into it. So we'll see if they can.
Trap game. I'm just laughing when you say that for the Bills.
About the Bills. Hey,
great.
As I said, it's a good time to be a Bills fan. Got to celebrate and appreciate it while you can, because as we've seen in years past, it can change quickly. So full steam ahead for Sean McDermott and the boys as they head to Cincinnati this week. For Vic Carucci of the Buffalo News, I'm Jonah Vic of Channel 2 Sports. Thanks for joining us online.